25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Monday morning. Tomorrow, April 22nd, if I did my math right, is the 69th anniversary of the death of our next guest's father, if I did my math right. He died just 2 weeks before the end of World War II. He was Private First Class Tom T. Wilmoth, and he died in the line of duty. He had a wife named Martha and 3 young children, Karolyn, Tom, and Donna. And Karolyn is on the phone. Her name is Karolyn Rogers, and I'm assuming that's a married name. I don't know for sure. But the book is called When Daddy Comes Home, and the book is so touching and so... I lost my dad when he had lived a long life. I know you lost your dad when he was relatively young, Robin. He was like 50-something. I was lucky. I was able to have both my parents until they had lived a full life. Your father's life was cut short. Our next, Karolyn Rogers' father's life was cut way short. And it's hard to imagine, unless you've lived it, what it's like. But Karolyn has done a great job of letting us in on how she handled it, and what it was like for her to reconnect with the father she hardly knew. Good morning, Karolyn Rogers. Good morning, Karolyn.
Good morning, Larry. How are you?
Pretty good. Where are you?
I am in Kingsland, Texas, on the Colorado River.
All right. I love your accent. Did you grow up there?
I grew up in West Texas and New Mexico. I am an oil field child. Oil has fed me all my life. I'm from the oil fields, and so Michael had a hard time understanding what some of the terminology was about where we lived and how we made a living and that sort of thing. But I'm just so proud to be able to talk about the book When Daddy Comes Home. It was at least 13 years of research to come together, and Michael Levin compiled it for me. And there is so much more information than the book includes that we could talk for a week.
So how old were you? How old were you when he was killed?
I was 5 years old, but I love my daddy so much that I knew what was going on. And when they decided to make that last surge and call 100,000 men, and that was men from all walks of life, they just took them. That's when, if the enemy would have known we were that weak, they could have taken us then. And he was trained very quickly at Camp Fannin and sent straight to the Ardennes Mountains, and it was the coldest winter on record. And he wrote letters every day. There's about 700 letters between my parents in the short period of time that he was there, which was about 6 months.
Wow.
And right before Christmas.
Wow.
And it was a very, very sad time, Larry, because he had the premonition. He knew he'd never come back. And I just could not bear seeing my daddy have to go. And we were just all, every day, waiting for him to come home. And he seemed to know all the time. He told my grandfather that he knew if he went across that pond, he'd never be back.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And how much of what you have in the book was information you didn't even know until you started to write the book?
Well, most of it I didn't, because the government wrote my mother after my father's death and said that they wrote my mother and said, we do not have to tell you anything if we don't want to. And that letter, that telegram, is in the book. And the cold-heartedness of that just really struck me as couldn't they have done a better job. And he was buried 3 times. He was buried in Germany, and Ike was so incensed that our guys were buried in German soil that he took them and moved them to France. And they moved Tom T to Saint Yvo Cemetery in Saint Laurent, France. And then about 2 years after the war was over, they brought him home. And he is now resting in the Fort Gibson National Cemetery just outside of Muskogee, Oklahoma. So there was no closure there, actually, for myself and my brother and sister. And they say that's one of the most traumatic things that can happen to a child. Well, my heart just hurts for all the people that we lost on 9/11, that the families that will never know where their family member, their loved one, really is. And that's what I wish I would have had the book written by then. But what you do is you go on. But I began to dig. I had to know. And so I really had to dig hard when you're working with them, and they'd say, no, records were burned. It took a long time and a lot of research to find out what really happened to my daddy. And the most serendipitous thing that could have happened is I was lucky enough to meet the doctor that took care of my daddy in the medical tent.
Really? Wow.
And he was a wonderful, wonderful man, and you could tell by looking at his eyes, he had a he was a very special man, and it's hard to describe, but his wife told me, said he can't hear, so he probably doesn't, and he doesn't remember very many. And I said, but would you ask him if he remembers Tom T. Wilmoth? And he turned around and looked at me, and he said, yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, what happened? And he said, I did everything I could for him and sent him back to the medics. Because what he had done, they were taking what was called the Dillinger Bridge that was so armed with ammunition it could have blown up Germany. And he ran up on an embankment at that bridge and hit a landmine and was blown to pieces. But that was just a gift, I thought, to be able to meet that doctor and for him to remember my daddy out of all the guys he took care of.
Wow. It sounded like when you told that story that he could hear you, even though it sounded like at first you said he couldn't hear, but it sounded like he heard you. Am I right?
He could not hear, and his wife wrote a note and asked him, and I didn't expect him to say anything, and he jerked around and looked at me and said yes, and I thought, what a bouquet. He remembered my daddy out of everybody.
Really?
Wow.
And he was a special, special man, and I just, to this day, I miss him, but you don't wonder what your life would have been. You just went on. My mother was a very, very strong woman, and we just carried on. And when my mother remarried, I had a very, very wonderful stepfather that I love very much. We did not get to talk about Tom T. It was like, let's don't talk about it.
Now, why?
Therefore, my children and their children did not know this wonderful man was their grandfather until this book was written.
Oh, wow. Now, why do you refer to him as Tom T. and not Dad or Daddy?
Well, I call him Daddy. But
Oh, you do? Okay.
I have a brother named Tom, and I don't know. So we started calling him Tom T, and it kind of stuck.
Okay.
You know.
All right. So, are you the older of the three children?
I am the oldest one, and there were the three of us that you mentioned, Larry. There was Tom and Donna, and she was like only 8 months old, so she has no memories. Her memories she is gaining from the research that we've gotten for the book. And then when my mother remarried, I had 2 younger brothers, so there were 7 of us all together. And so that's why I call him Tom T, because I called my stepfather Dad as well.
Okay.
I was very fortunate to have the kind of stepfather I did. The only thing that I'm trying to get to is the no talk rule that was not right. and it hurts me to think this. It was such a cheat to Tom T. that his grandchildren didn't know he existed.
Yeah, by the time you had grandchildren, though, okay, I'm a little confused here. So you as children were told not to talk about it?
We were not told not to talk about it. It was just silent, kind of a silent rule.
Okay.
Because we sensed that it hurt my stepfather's feelings. It would have made him feel like he was not adequate.
Okay.
And Tom T. could do anything. He could do anything. I've never wondered what my life would have been like had my father come home. Because what's the point in that? And it just became a fantasy. But the grief stages were buried in there, and
You there? Oh, I think we lost her. Karolyn, are you there? I think
No,
something.
she's gone.
Something snapped. You heard it snap?
I heard
Okay.
it snap.
Well, maybe she'll call back. I don't know what happened there. I can see that the line is out. The book is called When Daddy Comes Home. Karolyn Rogers was just kind of holding us spellbound a little bit there. Should we call her, Rob, or do you think she'll know to call us?
I think she could call us.
Do we have another number? But anyway, it's an interesting story and very heartfelt. And she said, and I wonder this actually, if there could have been more written. It sounds like there could have been more. Okay. All right, I didn't have to call off the air. When Daddy Comes Home is the book that she was just talking about, and Robin will try to get her back on the air so we can continue our conversation. Let me see if I can hear her.
All circuits are busy now.
Okay.
Please try your call again later.
All right. All right. We'll take a little break. We'll fix this and come back. Let's get interesting. And once again, technology has not done well for us. We'll be right back.
Are you wasting hundreds or thousands of dollars on termite retreat fees? If you're not with Turner Pest Control, you probably are. Turner Pest Control offers the industry's only termite and pest control package that never charges retreat fees, ever. You can get started today for only $99. This is a value of $500 or more. This includes treatments, installation of monitoring stations, quarterly pest control, and a lifetime guarantee, all for an unbelievable low $99. Even if you have another pest control provider, visit turnerpest.com to find out how you can avoid paying those high termite retreat fees.
Who would you feed if you had 50 chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A? WOCA and Chick-fil-A in the Paddock Mall have teamed up to reward one organization with 50 chicken sandwiches as a way of saying thanks for the great work that organization is doing in our community. And we need your help. See, there are so many great people doing great things that we need nominations. You can nominate your own organization or any organization you choose. Simply send an email to WOCA@WOCA.com. And in 350 words or less, tell us why the organization you are nominating should receive 50 free chicken sandwiches from WOCA and Chick-fil-A at the Paddock Mall. We'll review your nominations and then select one deserving organization each month. We'll announce the winner and even read the winning entry on the air. Make sure to include the contact name and phone number of the organization that you are nominating. And thanks from your friends at WOCA and Chick-fil-A in the Paddock Mall.
All right, 12 minutes before 10 o'clock, and we do have Karolyn Rogers back on the phone. Again, her book is called When Daddy Comes Home. I apologize, we had a phone glitch or something, and she was holding us spellbound, telling us her story.
Yeah.
Good. Karolyn, you're back on now. Thank you. I apologize. I don't know what happened there. Karolyn?
She's gone.
She's gone again. Phones used to work. Do you remember when phones worked pretty well?
Yeah, they did.
Do you remember
They
when
worked
we used to
well.
be able to call people and stay on the phone with them forever?
Yes, exactly.
And then the phone company just charged us a gigantic amount in order to do that?
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
So anyway, do you know what I'm anxious about hearing from her? If you try to put yourself in her shoes as the child of a soldier who died before you really got to know your own dad.
Yeah.
Right? You can do that. And I know this sounds weird, but I'm putting myself in his shoes, assuming there is an afterlife. I would want my children to know who I was.
Oh, certainly.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know what really happens after we die, but I would hope that you would be able to somehow communicate. And you never know. Maybe she was influenced a little bit by him from the other side, so to speak. The technology is just driving me nuts.
I know.
There's always something that you have to turn your head to see lights, and I don't know how to reconnect with her. So do we have her number?
So let me try it again.
All right. So anyway, while Robin is doing that, let me just remind you of a couple things. By the way, if you were paying attention to what that was about, there is an opportunity for a young person in your family to perhaps learn a little bit about what Memorial Day means to him or her, and the way that would happen is by writing a Memorial Day essay. There's the 6th annual essay contest titled "What Does Memorial Day Mean to Me?" and the deadline for entering is the last day of April. This is a contest that is open to Marion County middle school, and high school students. It's the 6th annual essay. It's called "What Does Memorial Day Mean to Me?" To be eligible, you have to be in Marion County public schools. No, you don't have to be in public school. It can be private, public, charter, or homeschool. All children in that category, in other words, all students would be acceptable. Entries must be presented in the format of a personal essay between 300 and 325 words using double-spaced 12-point font. Well, I'll give you a phone number. You can get all that information later on. But anyway, the deadline is by the end of this month, and then the winners will be announced on May 26th. And the awards include a $500 Visa.
That's Karolyn.
Visa gift card.
That's Karolyn. I just transferred her.
All right.
To your line.
Well, anyway, so let me give you the number for that if you're interested. I know I went on a tangent there. Beverly is who you would call 671-6466. Karolyn, I don't know what's going on with the phone. Good morning again.
I don't know, Larry. It's called country living. You never can have a decent telephone. I apologize profusely.
Oh, that's okay. But here's what I wanted you to kind of pick up on or help fill in the blanks. When you were doing the research on your dad, did you have any sense that maybe he was helping you from the other side?
Absolutely. I felt like I had the call to. It was time to find out. And my mother had 2 boxes of letters, and she didn't want me to read them. And I thought, well, they're bedroom business or all that, and okay. But when it was time to read them, I said, where are those letters? Because I'm going to read Daddy's letters. And I knew where one box was, and I went straight to the other one in her house. And I read those letters, Larry, and I could only read them a little bit at a time because it was so emotional. And that's when it all started. And it also was kicked off by a letter from Dear Abby that I had an uncle in West Virginia that read that my mother was a Gold Star wife and she was entitled to the benefits of being a World War II widow. And that started it. And then it went from there. And, it like Social Security card was made out of tin then. And it was just all kinds of things I learned that I didn't know. But the letters, I copied some of the letters, and they're in the book. And it was very much a love story. And they only had 7 years together.
Oh, really?
That's what kicked it all off. And when Mother got that check finally, because she'd say, "Where's that check? Where's that check?" Well, if you work with the VA, it's slow, believe me. Well, I don't know. His spirit just came alive. That's all there is to it. He was still there. And I feel him around me every once in a while. And it had been like that all my life, but I didn't know it. But he had a great sense of humor. He was a lot of fun. And, when Daddy came home, it was fun time. I don't remember any bad times. You always remember only the good. But it's true what I remember. And people say you can't remember that. I remember every detail. When he came home, it was going to be fun. and it was fun made out of simple things, nothing, And he was just, if a hardship came along, he took it with a smile. He said, "We'll work it out." He always said, "We'll work it out."
Well, you did have your share of being discriminated against because in your book you read that one little girl said that her mom wouldn't let her play with you anymore because you didn't have a daddy.
I'll never forget that because there was a problem after the war with people not wanting to rent to these houses or not wanting to rent at these houses or apartments to these widows because some of them would just go off and leave their children, which I can't imagine. And my mother just was totally devoted to her children, and I didn't want her out of my sight till I was a great big kid. And if she was gone too long or something, I would be in hysterics, But my mother lived a long life. She lived a good life, and she just passed away not that long ago at 94 at home peacefully with all of her children around her.
Wow.
But she brought us through.
Did she know you were writing the book?
Oh, yes, and she would just scrunch her shoulders up and smile. She said, "It's all true. It's all true. There's not one made-up paragraph in the book. It all is true."
So So tell me about your This is kind of a weird question because your dad died when you were 5. But tell me about your relationship with your father, how it changed because of the book. Do you feel like your relationship is more complete? Maybe that's the way to ask this.
My relationship with who, Larry? I'm sorry.
With your father. In other words, after doing all the research, did you feel?
Oh, yes.
Did you feel like some of the?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And I'm not kidding you, Larry. It's spooky. I look just like him. So it's just my relationship with him was always alive. I love that guy more than anything in the world. And I know he took us to my grandparents to live because a lot of guys did that. That was a safe place, and that was a place to go. And Mother was going to sell our car. And Daddy always loved his car. He could make a car run like a sewing machine. And I said, "Mother, you cannot sell our car." She said, "We don't need it." And she sold the car. And Mother was very practical and did it with a stiff upper lip,
Yeah.
And she rolled with the punches, and she was a very unbelievably, she was a bit small. You wouldn't believe how strong she was, And so when we lost my father, she wasn't going to stay. She was going to have her own place and raise her own children, and that's what she did.
Do you know the veterans that we know, and we know a lot of veterans because first of all, we're a very friendly veteran radio station, and very friendly veteran town as a community. But one of the things that always is obvious is that every veteran always has this sense that they could have died in whatever battle, whatever war they responded to. Whether it's Vietnam, Korea, World War II, any of them, they all knew somebody who didn't survive, and they all have that survivor's guilt, if you will.
Right, which is sad because it just wasn't meant to be. They made it, and the other guy didn't.
But I guess all I wanted to say was that your dad and the dads who didn't get killed in the war all contributed to the lifestyle we have now. Had your dad not done,
of course they did.
Yeah, had they not done what they did, I'd probably be first of all, I probably wouldn't even be on the radio, let alone speaking English.
Yeah.
Right. You are so right.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, there's always so many things I want to say in a short period of time. But I love all the vets to death, and I went and I found the 12th Armored veterans, and there were not very many of them, and got close to some of them, very close. and they didn't one man remembered my father, and that was lucky. But I want to thank everybody that's protecting our country today, and we need to stand up and take care of our country now. We're giving it away every day.
Yeah,
and the guys that wrote the Constitution were pretty darn smart. Now
right.
And I don't see how we cannot use that as a guideline.
Thank you so much for being on the air. I apologize for the phone problem. We've got 15 seconds. Do you have a website you can tell us about?
Yes, I do. It's just www.KarolynRogers.
Karolyn Rogers with a K. I have a copy of the book. So if you call me, I'll give you the book. The rest of us have to go buy it, go to Amazon, etc. Thank you so much, Karolyn.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. The Boston Marathon underway. A year after the bombings that killed 3 and injured 260.
Under blue skies with a high of 65 today, amid security that is so tight with thousands of officers, bomb-sniffing dogs, and surveillance technology, making the 26-mile stretch one of the most secure places in the world.
Fox Radio's Jeff Manasso in Boston. An Easter service turned into a nightmare in Fort Myers, Florida, when a car plowed into the Second Haitian Baptist Church. Police Lieutenant Victor Medico.
20 or more parishioners were using jacks from their cars, and they were attempting to jack and manually lift the vehicle off several people that were trapped underneath.
The driver lost control of her car while turning into a parking space. Attacks in Iraq today have killed at least 19, and one incident, a suicide bomber drove into a police checkpoint near Baghdad, killing 12. Fox News, we report, you decide.
The world is going crazy. There's the potential Zombie-geddon, the meteorite apocalypse, and dolphins are becoming too smart for their own good. Prepare your getaway car now at Napa. Stock up on Castrol GTX oil for just $3.49 a quart.